greatest form of control is where you think you're free when you're being fundamentally manipulated and dictated to. One form of dictatorship is being in a prison cell and you can see the bars and touch it. The other one is sitting in a prison cell but you can't see the bar, you think you're free. What the human race is suffering from is mass hypnosis. We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
And yes, you are tuned in to another episode of the Red Pill Hardcore TV show. And yes, I'm your host, V. I really hope you guys are enjoying your holiday season and making the best out of it. And so, without further ado, so I can go back to my vacation, I'm going to present to you the Hope and Unity Conference Part 2. And this time we will have Dr. Andrews doing a presentation. So please enjoy.
In February 2018, I finished documenting a long report of the crimes that were perpetrated against me in Vancouver, Canada, and I sent it out to what I thought were some of the prominent TIs, and I included Dr. Sean Andrews. And so Dr. Sean Andrews, Sean, was the first TI who contacted me and brought me into this community. And he contacted me on the way home from my car wash job at the time. I was working at a car wash, recovering from being targeted. And he said, how about come on the Ella Free show in half an hour? And I said, okay. And I proceeded to speak to Ella and Sean. They interviewed me, and I was standing outside in the cold February air for 3 hours, and I started shivering during that. That was my first introduction. I didn't even realize how big the community was, and I didn't realize how many people were listening to Ella's show that night. So with that, I would like to thank Sean for that, and Sean is going to be talking about directed energy weapons and detection methods and shielding. So take it away, Sean.
Thank you, Matt. And let's just thank Allison for putting together a great conference. I'm very excited to be here with you all. So today I have a really tall task, and it's a task that's hard to wrap up in just a few slides, and you can talk about all the intricacies. And it's going to be focused on directed energy weapons as much as we know about them, some through wall radar technology, which I'm sure you guys already know about, and as well as some RF protection methods, and possibly, if we have time, just a brief overview of how to use these devices and what they're made to do. So, for those of you that don't know me, I am a co-host occasionally on Ella Free's show. I usually have a pretty gruff personality on there. I do a lot of interrogation-style interviews, and I get a lot of hate mail for it. And I expect the same from this presentation. Okay, so let's get started. So most of you know about the electromagnetic spectrum. You're familiar with a lot of the different bands associated with the electromagnetic spectrum, from your infrared to your radio waves, your microwaves, and your ionizing energies. We're not getting into this because most of you have already done maybe years of research, maybe just months, but you're all familiar. This is the basic building block upon which all your knowledge is truly based. So today, for the most part, we're going to focus on what we can detect. What we can detect readily, and what's most likely to be occurring is the use of radio waves and microwaves to facilitate your targeting. So electromagnetic wave, this is just one quick slide on this, is two energies that are coupled together. So we have an electric field and a magnetic field. They go in one direction effectively. It's very, very directional, very, very small. You can pinpoint target just about anything that you want. And this has about the speed of light in a vacuum. And these types of energies, depending on the frequency, can interact with water. And since we are mostly made of water, it is very, very effective as a source of energy for our targeting. So, how does electromagnetic energy interact with the target? Well, Matt had mentioned earlier that most of what's published out there is that EMF, we'll call it from now on, just for to be a little more brief, creates thermal effects, and that's what we see in the literature. We see thermal effects, we see apoptosis, which is cell death, but nothing is really discussed about the other effects because the studies have not been done or they've been dissuaded and they're just not available. So we, for the most part, if you go to Wikipedia and you look up what are the effects of electromagnetic radiation, you find just thermal heating. And it's exactly what we see with certain types of active denial technologies, such as this Raytheon pain array. This is instituted in a prison in California to deter prisoners from going and rioting and acting up and so forth. And there's videos of it being used in the prison and how shocking it is to the person receiving the signal, right? Supposedly, from the literature, from Raytheon themselves, they want to sell this as not being, as being non-lethal, if you will, right? So that penetration is very, very small. That's what they say at 1/64th of an inch. That is if the device is turned down really low. That does not, it has greater capabilities that they're not telling you in the literature for obvious reasons. So we look at, so finding out what the effects are of EMF on cells, on tissue, on a human being, on an animal, it's a very complicated subject. Again, the literature is scarce and sporadic, and it's hard to adapt that information that's available on how cells react to EMF to a human, or how a small animal reacts to EMF in a human. However, there are studies published on, for instance, rats affected by EMF that go ahead and have like heart arrhythmias and develop tumors and so forth. And there are several news stories that we'll cover here momentarily on the same occurrence. So here we have a chart, and for some of you it may be difficult to read, but basically what we're seeing is we're seeing EMF fields affecting possibly cell death, apoptosis, to everything from headaches to sleep disturbances to brain tumors to cancer, leukemia, and everything in between, right? We really don't have an understanding of the mechanisms by which EMF affects the human body. We know physical symptoms because, well, many of us here are victims of this, and we describe these symptoms, but no peer-reviewed literature on how this affects humans, and that's for good reason. That's not to say that there isn't human experimentation, which is done covertly on this type of research, but it's not something that's shared generally with the mass public. So why would you target the public, or what are the mechanisms by which you can target the public? Well, in recent years, we've seen a drastic change in our laws. In the last 20 years, we've seen 9/11, we've seen the evolution of the Patriot Act, the authorization of military force, we've seen the NDAA, Defense Authorization Act, as well as the very new, I believe it's called the Freedom Act, if I'm not mistaken.
Executive Order 12333.
And of course, this is an executive order that always gets me when I go to appeal my NSA letters. So it is very, if you read, DHS published a guide in 2013 indicating the reasons by which a U.S. citizen can get nominated to a watch list. And some of the reasons were very, very trivial, like just simply going to a protest can get you on a watch list. Carrying around too much money can get you on a watch list. There's about 50 different reasons that any of us, any person in this country can go out and do on a regular basis, not think twice about, not have any malice or intend any bad will, and become part of this watch list. And once you do, you become what is termed an enemy combatant. And the sad part is, there's no required evidence to nominate someone to these lists. It is not verified, put on this watch list, and as we know, we live in current conditions where there's plenty of money to all your three-letter agencies to watch and affect whoever they want. So money is, at this point, no object. Budgets keep escalating, but I'm sure you guys already know all of that. To what end? We have some people here who have spoken about what the eventualities will be, and what we're building to, and what the unaware society is naive about, we can say. and that is a slow degradation of our rights and a slow progression towards a police state, a technologically advanced police state, where what we're seeing here, what we're seeing in this picture, you know, 2 officers in full riot gear, in full military gear, affecting a poor soul, is antiquated at this point. This is old news. This is. They're already putting together, they're already putting forward in progress right now methods that make this obsolete, and we're all aware of that right now. So the tactics have many sources, but it's interesting because most of the information is available if you look in the right places. So this is this manual here is called the Joint Operations Manual, and there's a series of manuals. They're published by the Navy, they're published by the Army. This is a joint version. There's a couple other branches that also publish their own version. But the joint version is probably the most important, because the joint version rolls in your local law enforcement, it rolls in your corporations, it rolls in just at your neighbor. And there are several methods and strategies and sort of terms by which these operations are rolled out in every one of us using a manual, using standard tactics that are available to you that you can read between the lines and see how this is being rolled out in your life. So you listen to my interview back in 2015, November 2015, I did with Ella. I talked about the breakdown of how this works, where effectively you are an insurgency and everyone around you is made to act against you to quench your insurgency, because you are the undesired actor. You're bright, you have charisma, you have the ability to influence others. You are a person that they don't want to succeed in this world. The history of the U.S. And even, say, with some German influences, the Operation Paperclip, we've seen some human experimentation. So on the top left here, these aren't labeled, but we have the Tuskegee experiments with syphilis, right? Where African Americans were injected with syphilis for the sake of experimentation and see what would happen. On the right here, we have the famous Milgram experiment, where an observer or an active participant was made to shock someone in the next room and said that have been told that he could not stop and he must continue and keep shocking the person. And in most cases, the research showed that he continued to shock the person, understanding that he was inflicting physical pain on someone else. And in the lower center picture, we have Dr. Mengele, which I'm sure all of us already know the backstory. But these scientists from decades ago, were just transplanted here to the U.S. and entered into our 3-layer agencies through Operation Paperclip. So the research continued. So active denial. I spoke about the police state, physical force, policemen in SWAT gear with military equipment being obsolete. And what I mean by that is that now we're being sold methods by which that physical force is necessary to control populace, to control an individual, say even in a crowd who's protesting or who's seen unruly, by electronic means. So we're sold these devices, law enforcement is, for instance, is sold these, and 3-letter agencies, through all the various military contractors, are sold these devices that promise them, let's see, to coin the terms that they use here, ADS, so active denial, that's the term that they use to describe most of these weapons, has the potential to cause severe pain without leaving a visible mark or physically harming its target. It's interesting, in the sense that, the question, the statement begs, why wouldn't you want to leave a mark, right? You want this to be traceless. We all know that this what's being done to us is very, very intentional, but they're very careful about leaving any traces of evidence so we can document. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't still be here. And of course, it is silent and acts invisibly. Again, looking at these field manuals, which are a passion of mine, we have instructions on psychological operations, tactics, techniques, and procedures. You can go ahead and pull these manuals for yourself. They're available. There's a few dozen that are released every year. Some of them more interesting than others. But a lot of the tactics that are described, the strategies, you'll actually find that they'll apply to your life, as a targeted individual. And just to point out certain similarities here, in one of these manuals, joint operating targeting manuals, they have battlefield rhythm. So effectively, they describe how different shifts should work. And oftentimes what we'll see through our targeting is during a certain hour, we may get little targeting. Certain hour of the day, every day, little targeting. And what my understanding is that what's occurring at this time is that information from the previous shift is being transcribed to the forward shift. That's right. So again, I mentioned earlier that all this information is available if you know what to look for. The most interesting thing to go and view is job openings for defense contractors, because in those descriptions, they'll tell you the types of technologies that they want you to be familiar with when you're going in. And if you look up what these acronyms mean, all these systems, you'll see the type of surveillance systems they use that include like through-wall radar systems, that include monitoring of surveillances that are unbelievable. And it's all available in the public. It's all named in such a way where it's not obvious. But again, if you just Google, you go to these descriptions, you look at what they're hiring for, and then go ahead and Google the description of the databases and the technologies that they want.
Let's apply for these jobs.
What's that?
Let's apply for these jobs. Bombard with resumes.
So in most cases, they require TSCI clearance, and top secret clearance, and code letter clearance. So they don't even consider you unless you have those. But again, you see stories such as that young NSA girl who recently got busted for divulging a bunch of information on Trump. So like 22-year-olds can get in. Will we get in? Probably not, especially if there's some documented history that you're involved in activism. They do pretty thorough background checks.
Go ahead.
All right, so these technologies have been rolled out, and they've been slow-rolled in such a way where we're introduced to these technologies in foreign environments that don't involve Americans, right? So overseas, we've rolled out these ADS type systems, these 95 gigahertz active nano systems. We've all seen a picture of the giant Hummer with a big ditch on it, and as well as the field experiments they did on the people in the field, and they scatter whenever they're hit. Now, what you don't see is, and I don't have this image, and it just occurred to me, I probably should have had it, that one of those trials, which is the reason why they discontinued that device, the Hummer-mounted ADS type device, is because they tried it on an individual and turned the power so high that it actually charred the individual, and they were extracted from a fire. They were absolutely charred. And ever since that incident, that created really bad PR. They wrapped it up, and they discontinued the use of these ADS type devices on the battlefield. But this was meant to be a slow roll to introduce us to what this technology is, and possibly to have it transferred to local law enforcement at some point, as to deter protests and to keep civil peace, if you will. So non-lethal weapons are all the big rave. They have been for quite some time, along with local law enforcement, and they take many forms. So here we have just a display, and this one I'm actually not that familiar with, but if you were to, again, go back and Google some of these acronyms that are found in these job descriptions, and just type into Google and then do Google image search, for some of them you will find what these interfaces look like for these surveillance technologies. And they look like something like this, where you have an image of a person, you have certain areas of interest, whether that's thermal contrast, you have the environment, you have the location, right? These softwares that they're requiring people to understand and know are available. Simple screenshots. You obviously won't see anything that's classified, unless you get really lucky, or it's leaked somewhere. But these are the type of interfaces. You can imagine that your handlers, your high-level perps might be looking at. And the attacks don't stop at just EMF. We talk about thermal effects. We talk about some of the long-term effects of EMF. They can be leukemia. They can be apoptosis. But we can also go ahead and affect V2K, which I think Matt touched on a little bit, but most of you are familiar with, to try to induce that auditory effect in your head. Now, the slow roll has taken many forms. Again, this is semi-published. These are available, I believe, through the Joint National Research Lab, which coincidentally was located at Penn State University, my alma mater. I was not aware of that for quite some time, and as a result, people often are very suspicious of me only because I went to Penn State. But if I went to Penn State and I was involved in any of this research, I wouldn't be here discussing it and openly talking about it. So, just so you know, and I've gotten, this is some of the hate mail I get, you're from Penn State, you're a perp. Well, no, I'm trying to educate you all about what's going on, to the best of my knowledge, the best that I know of. And this is as new to me as it is to you. But these are all, if you look at presentations from Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Lab at Penn State, you'll find a bunch of these presentations that are absolutely fascinating. When technologies mimic the intended effects of the technology mimic what we're all experiencing. So here are some larger photo ops, if you will, of what these things can look like, take form in when you can transport in just a regular vehicle. And I will just say, as an aside here, we have a car, where it's in the trunk, and how do you experience, the car harassment? And I do as well. On some days you get red and white cars, and other days when you've been bad, you get all black cars, right? I promise you that if there's any mobile unit, the car that's going to be hitting you is the most inconspicuous car on the block. It's not the one that you're looking at, right? And that's part of the whole deception. If you look at these military manuals, you read the deception manual, you'll find that it's a giant game of deception, and it's very easily to get tricked. And I've been tricked many, many times. But you always have to, and Milo might agree with me here, but if you're being shown something, you have to understand that it is intended for you to look in that direction. And you should always, as a default, look the other way, or wonder why you're being shown that, why you're being manipulated in that direction. But we'll move on. So some more public instances of harassment include the most recent one, which Mash touched on, which is these sonic attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Cuba, where the staff is sick. And surprisingly, it's strange because we've gotten this much media coverage, and if you ever read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, you find that at certain times in our culture, we'll find there will be certain opportunities where people take interest in something and follow something up, and it's very rare when that happens. I think that the fact that this story even got coverage just so happened because things can be carried in such a way where people took interest. And I'm having difficulty trying to describe the situation, but oftentimes these stories get dismissed. These stories wouldn't make it to the media. But for some reason, this intrigued maybe one person, maybe 10 people, and this is perpetuating in the news cycle. We keep seeing follow-ups to
Yeah,
this
there's a
story.
recent update, now 25.
I saw one a couple days ago.
Yeah.
Do you think most people think it actually came from Cuba? Or like us, I don't know about you all.
So right now, to my understanding, the attacks are being framed, the attacks in the U.S. Embassy in Cuba are being framed as unexplained. And with possible sources being the Cuban government perpetuating these attacks in the U.S. Embassy. Which doesn't make sense considering that travel restrictions have been lifted and the Cuban economy is booming right now as a result of all the money that's coming in from tourism.
I get an idea on that.
Yeah, but the Donald just wants to take that back.
So the restrictions were lifted prior to Trump, right?
I get an idea on that.
We can speculate as to why, who is the culprit
The
here.
State Department also said that they never heard of anything like this and had never received any complaints before, which is outright lies.
We should all just be thankful that these types of stories are being covered. Whether or not it's a sonic attack, presumably, I'm inclined to think it's not solely sonic.
Yeah.
We should be glad and ask questions and show interest and visit these sites and give them clicks so then they know that people are interested in these stories.
Well, one
What about
encouraging sign,
Russia?
there was a mention of the electromagnetic weapon on the Daily Mail when they were covering this story. So that's kind of new. I never seen the media use electromagnetic weapon before.
Right,
They're
so-
throwing that out there too.
Right, so the key term, and you see this, we see this in written certain redactions, typically the term was directed energy up until maybe 2010. So if you look at some of the old manuals that refer to directed energy weapons, But ever since about 2010, people have been like wondering what these things are, asking questions. It's fueled conspiracy theories. It's, you know, we've all latched onto it, even though it's in accredited published manuals. But they changed the terminology now to electromagnetic. And they don't want you to use that term. That's the way they now describe it internally and in their new reports. But they want you to use directed energy, they want you to use microwave, you know, basically anything that would lead others who you're talking to believe that, you know, you're a tinfoil hat or you're a conspiracy theorist. So when you discuss these things, it's very important to use the same terms that they use currently, just electromagnetics. All right, I'll follow this up with a quick story. So this is, unfortunately, I wanted to play the video, but it was like 19 minutes long on this, and it involves some like town meetings which are utterly boring. I don't want to bore you guys to death more than I probably already have. But 6 firefighters living in a firehouse. The firehouse decided to try to make some money inside by having cell towers. So the antenna array is mounted on the side of the firehouse. And the men who lived there, who were residents of the firehouse, the firefighters in the firehouse, after a few years, it turns out that they had their brain scanned and showed hyperexcitability with possible suggestions of early onset Parkinson's, ALS, Alzheimer's. And now 8 years later, 2 of the men have had psychotic breaks with reality and are suffering from memory impairment. All the men tested in 2004 had tremors, and some were still in their 20s. All right. So these men were sleeping right next to where these cell towers. And if you look, I'm driving. So I'm coming from just outside of Philadelphia today, yesterday. And I'm driving up, and I'm just looking around. It's everywhere that you look, you see these cell towers on sides of buildings, made to look like fake trees. On schools, like it's unbelievable. Yeah. With no consideration of what the ramifications for your health might be.
None. Zero.
So we see them painted to be the same color as buildings, such as this brick-sided cell tower, and of course this is income. So I don't know what they actually pay to request the use of your building, but presumably it's probably a couple $100 per antenna. Right, and who's going to say no to that? It's easy money, especially if you don't live there, right? You're the superintendent of
$5,000 a month.
$5,000 a month?
Uh-huh.
Well, as long as you don't live there, and you're, well, I think one brief question for you. So.
Yeah, there's a story about the Port Authority that put out these strange towers.
Yeah, so that story was really interesting. The MTA down in New York put up these strange steel towers. That was sold to be as having DHS, Department of Homeland Security, purposes, but they can't explain why they're up. All that we know is that they were encased in a steel mesh, and they had to install really large fiber optics going to those towers, to those steel towers. But there were like 3 stories written on it in prominent newspapers, to my knowledge. And this is a conversation I was having back and forth with Julianne McKinney. And she was fascinating. And it's hard to get Julianne McKinney fascinated about anything. Yeah. But yeah, so she took.
What did she say? What did she say about them?
She said that she found a picture of one of those towers opened up, and inside you saw the microwave antennas. So it's a communication cell, possibly targeting tower. Yeah. That's disguised as a very fashionable pylon. It also costs $100 million to install.
Per pylon?
For the project, which I think it's for 2 tunnels.
Okay.
So a couple of different sites, but it's still a lot of money.
Did you say a targeting tower?
Yeah, but that's my opinion. I can just tell you that an electronics expert, Julianne McKinney, recognized microwave antennas, which is the technology that's most likely to be used on us. It's steerable. You can pinpoint target and track someone in their vehicle as you're going through a tunnel, or you can just profile them so you know their every move, from a blink to an eye to how they're breathing to what their heart rate is, based on pulsations from their heart on their skin. You know, the skin moves every time you pulsate. But that's my opinion. They're targeting towers. That's not actually. We actually don't know that information.
Can you explain what again? I'm missing.
So there are these mystery towers. We can discuss this, after the presentation. But there are these mystery towers that were put up at the MTA, so down New York City, you have bridges and tunnels. On 2 different sites, they put up these large metal towers that no one will say what they were meant to do or what they're for, unless they were pressed. And at which point they were pressed, they just said that they were used for homeland security purposes, and they can't discuss what those purposes are. The only thing we know is people who have been observing the installation of these towers noticed they were putting in very large fiber optics leading into the towers. And there's one picture with one of these towers that has a cover off, and one of our TI experts here recognized that as being a micro antenna array. But we see these pictures of camouflage towers on buildings. You have to ask yourself why. Why would you want to camouflage that, right? Is there any pushback? Is this purely for aesthetics? This is a brick building that doesn't look very aesthetically pleasing to me, so why would you want to blend these things in so well? We can take it a step further. On my way up here from Pennsylvania on I-95, I can't tell you how many of these I saw. Not palm trees, obviously, in the Northeast, but these really weird, wonky, pointed angle tree-like facilities that jut out of these towers. We're like, well, who are you guys kidding? Like, I can see it's not a tree. Like, there's cell phone towers there, right? And you have to wonder yourself, why are these all of a sudden being hidden in camouflage? And they're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere.
Arizona has one.
Why? Why are they there? Is it? Do we need to have coverage in every single spot? Like in basements?
It's a mandate. Your basement had them installed in our school or high school, and it was a mandate. The board said that they had to put it because the government wants them everywhere.
Right, and there's tons of backing. There's tons of government backing, initiatives, and funding, and schools don't want to give that up because it's profitable.
And it's crazy because my friend uses her iPhone all the way to Rhode Island to the beach on Wi-Fi, based on those towers.
So we can move forward on
Along the highway.
different types of targeting devices. We can go forward to these contact devices, these focused sound devices. In some cases, TIs experience loud poppings and loud startling sounds, and these devices would fit the bill of the type of device that would cause us. And you guys have seen these devices before. You can purchase these. We have the audio spotlight, and the gentleman who's doing these studies on that. That'll be a lot of us crowdfunded. So, I myself have received a very loud slamming pop inside of my head where I dropped to the floor because I thought it was shot. But you guys, I'm sure, have your own stories. And, we see these sorts of electronic attacks come in many different forms, not just from burning sensations or palpitations or hits to all of your body and tremors, but also acoustic ones as well. There's very few pictures available on some of these technologies. And again, I have described cell phone towers. We've seen the ones installed in the prisons, the Raytheon device. This is a close shot of a prototype used by Raytheon that was published back in 2005, but has since sort of been scaled back, and it's hard to find these pictures anymore. But here's a close-up of what this looks like. Essentially, it's an EMF emitting device that's very, very directional. And it's mounted on an aperture, right, that you can focus and aim on something. But now, the more effective way to do this is to use beam steering, not curving, steering. All right, be very careful by terminology. Where you use microarrays, where you can use these cell tower type devices to steer a beam that causes extreme heat, pain, palpitations, muscle contractions, and so forth. So this is antiquated technology at this point. And we see this throughout the news, again, of these uses of devices on crowds. And we're getting rollout, we're getting transfer of military technology to our police forces and so forth. And a lot of the times when you ask this information, and I did personally, I wrote a bunch of freedom of information requests in Pennsylvania to see what kind of equipment they got transferred to their forces. And of course, when they get these equipments transferred to them, whether it's from the military, like on old Hummers, whatever it might be, to these giant armored trucks, to even things like these active denial devices, they always sign a confidentiality agreement where they cannot disclose the information of what they receive. And that's with contractors, and that's with the military. So you can ask for a freedom of information request with wherever you want, but they've signed a 4-day contract, and they've used those exemptions on you to deny you that information. So we also, moving forward, have seen these images of through-wall targeting. It was a simple, presumably some guy with a microwave with the door disabled, putting up against your hotel room wall and then blasting you in your sleep where you feel all of your effects. But the technology has progressed since this quite a bit, where now there's a whole other aspect of tracking you in every single thing that you do within your own home or wherever you are. And that's through these see-through wall technologies. So what's deceiving here is that oftentimes you see these pictures of see-through wall technologies and they're always at the wall, right? It's like some officer has to go up to your wall with a search warrant, of course, and put it up to your wall, and then you can see what's going on inside. That's not the case. If you read the fine print on a lot of these devices, and these are the ones that you can buy commercially. These aren't the ones that are not released or only released to special contractors and so forth. These devices have ranges of between 65 and 100 feet away from the home that they can see through the wall.
Yep. I think it's 2,000.
And these are very rudimentary compared to what's available. So they can see when you blink with their more advanced devices, what I'm showing here. They can see your breathing rate. They can see when you twitch a finger. And for me, at least from personal experience, if I were to make an unusual movement or an unusual facial expression, I would immediately get hit in that part of the face where I contracted the muscle. It'll typically contract. And I'll get hit, and I just so much as twitch a finger or tense a muscle, I'll get hit in that muscle. It's almost like they're mapping your body and how it responds and how it's strung together with all your muscles. It's really, really fascinating. And that's all aided with technology like this, where they can see through your walls. They don't need cameras. They don't need to look at your TV screens that might have a camera. They don't need to look at your computer. They don't need to use your cell phone or any implanted devices in your home, like surveillance cameras. They can just use your through-wall radar. The difference is that, and this is an interesting, for separate reasons, is that the image, as you can imagine, when you're using a device like this, isn't like me looking at you or you looking at me. It's a pixelated cartoon image that might have three-dimensionality to it, but it's not in color. You can't see the various tones in my face or color of my hair. You just see an object. Now, if you're pushing the trigger on someone, you're trying to target them. You're trying to hit them with your device or to cause harassment, trying to harass them. It's much, much easier, and I think all of you would agree with me, to hit a cartoon than it is to hit a person that you see in front of your face. It's harder for me to pull the trigger on that if I'm here right next to him, rather than here behind a wall as a shadow, as a cartoon with maybe some 3D directionality to them. And that makes it easier for these psychopaths to target you. And emotionally detaches them from what they're doing. It's also important to understand there's compartmentalization. And one of the ways that these processes are compartmentalized is by masking a true image. Because at some point, I believe that humans are innately good. You may or may not agree with me, but I find it hard to believe that some individuals could just perpetually be evil. And masking someone, you guys may disagree, masking someone just makes it that much easier to detach and forget that emotion. So compartmentalization comes into play with that in the sense that they don't know what they're participating in. They don't know the extent. And oftentimes you'll ask the police. Some of us have had like one-on-ones with police officers or first responders who participate. You so happen the commissions come together just right. You can ask them a question in earnest. And some of the questions that I've always heard them ask in response is, how many of you are there? Because they have no idea.
Wow.
They think it's just that one bad apple they've been told 10 minutes ago. That you're a bad apple, you have this dossier and they made you look bad. I think it's just you. They don't realize this is happening to tens of thousands of us. I only have about 10 minutes. I'm going to have to move a little bit quicker through some of these slides. So again, when I describe some of these through-wall technologies, what you're actually viewing, what they are actually viewing, is some of these images where we just see three-dimensional profiles of someone. And for the most part, there's automation built in. So you look at you look at the job description, you go ahead and Google some of the technologies and interfaces they require that we use for some of these jobs. You'll see these interfaces and what they look like, and you'll see images like this, right? And much more detail than we're seeing here. This is published in an academic paper, right? But this is at the college level, right? What do we have for defense contractors and working in technology for decades, right? We have much more detailed pictures like this, the cartoonized, if you will, what you and I look like, behind closed doors, in the shower, while you're sleeping, right? And again, create that detachment. But this technology is possible, it's rolled out, it's used for experimentation on us, it's used to target us, obviously, and it's very, very difficult to defeat. So how does it work? Well, I can't say for sure. I'll start with that. I can't say for sure, and I'm not going to speculate too much. So I'd say that the only thing that makes sense is radar. So very, very fast pulse radar to detect your movements very, very well. Again, you're a big sack of water. I'm a big sack of water, over 90% water. And they can tune the radar to detect water. So you can pulse radar in such a way, so fast, you can detect miniature motions, whether that's a blink of an eye, your blood vessel in your neck, enlarging every time your heart beats and so forth. Everything you do behind those walls can be seen, and you guys know that. And these devices can be mobile. I don't know the source. I can't speculate on the source. I have some reason to believe that cell towers, and I'm going to support this, can be used to look into homes through some of the same mechanisms. But it seems that there's always a little bit of delay before they can see your movements in the new location, unless they know you're going there and anything set up. But there's initial setup required, which is really interesting. And I don't know what to make of it. Maybe they're rolling in units, mobile units, to get a better picture of where you are, let's say, within a store. I'm not sure, but there's always a lag time. Places that are mapped out, like your home, are really, really easy for them because they can localize their instruments where they wanted to, or they have your house mapped out, so it's much easier for them to find you where you're at. Now, a lot of you realize that if you move furniture just a few inches, they get really, really upset. And it throws them way off. And that's for the very same reasons, because again, there's a lot of automation built in how the resolution of these pictures comes through. And that's through knowing what are the different densities of materials you have to pass through the walls from outside of your home to get through to see where you are within inside your home. Now, how do we do this at home? Well, one of the biggest things is we're reflecting some of the energy, we're absorbing some of the energy as electrical energy. We need an out for it. Otherwise, your material gets overwhelmed. It goes over capacitance, and there's nowhere for that energy to go except right through it to you. So a lot of you have built, and I've talked to a couple of people here already at the conference, have built Faraday cages, using big plates, and it's six-sided, you're in a cube, and you're still getting through. And my very first question I always ask is, did you ground your enclosure? And most of the time people say no, because they don't believe in grounding. Grounding is key. If you look at any of these military manuals on how to create enclosures for EMPs or how to protect equipment, they always ground their equipment. There's good cause for that. That energy that the material is being blasted through needs to go somewhere. And you don't want that to go through the material. All right. So how do you do this at home? Well, first of all, this takes, I'm kind of being, this is unfair in a sense that I'm assuming all of you live in a single family home and you can make modifications. That's not always the case. Your number one defense should always be to buy one of these $8 circuit checkers, plug them in and see the proper grounds. And if you live in an apartment complex and you can't stake a piece of copper bar into the ground or run a zero gauge wire through the wall, then your only defense would be to make sure that you have a proper ground using one of these devices and run one of these wires from your ground and your outlet, which is just a little screw in the middle, or even use one of these prongs by which the standard two prongs are disabled, they're plastic, they're not conductive, with just a ground and leads on the end, and then run that to your material to ground. Now, the thicker the wire, the better, but when using this type of grounding system, it's a very weak ground, this wire is very, very thin. Again, the closer you are to that ground, the thicker that ground is, and the closer you are to that ground that goes into the earth, the better your situation will be. As a last resort, if you live in an apartment complex, you can always ground into your pipes. If you have copper pipes, they have to be grounded, otherwise bad things would happen, but you can always use those as the last resort. Again, you want to use very, very thick wire to transfer that energy better. And the way I use this material, for instance, is I just hook a wire and I'll weave it through and go right to the outlet, and it's very, very effective.
Hello, I'm B from the Red Pill Hardcore TV show, and I'm here to deliver a message to you. I am standing up, and I think you guys should stand up too. What are we standing up for? Clean air. The New World governments have been spraying aluminum, strontium, barium, all kinds of nanoparticulates, salts, heavy metals, and we are losing our environment. We have trees with aluminum toxicity. Our wildlife is disappearing, one species at a time. We have weather warfare weaponry. If there is anything such as global warming, well, we have ionospheric heaters that's dramatically bombarding our atmosphere. All this damage can be done to the environment by these nanoparticulates being sprayed into the atmosphere. We know that it's causing respiratory issues. We know that it's causing autism. We know that it's causing Morgellons, the transhumanistic disease. What else is it doing? I think it may just be altering our minds. Watch my movie, and then you decide.
Hi everyone, I'm Ella Free from the Triumph Over Targeting podcast and Whistleblower Nation on Revolution Radio, and coordinator of the umbrella organization and promotional site freedomfortargetedindividuals.org. Today I'm going to be here with Terry Brewer from GANG-STALKINGcrimes.com, and we're going to be doing some public outreach on the local level here in Portland, Oregon. I feel that in order to stop the programs that are destroying countless lives and animals, we must first educate the public. It is only the public's acceptance of this information that is going to facilitate the changes that need to occur. There needs to be public outrage. So what can you do to contribute, to be a part of this, to help facilitate this change? Well, we all have a unique gift and skill set that can be used to help us with this monumentous movement. It is what we do with what you have that matters. If you can write letters, start letter writing campaigns, go to your city council and demand change. Bring the most credible and believable information in an organized manner to support your claims and your cause. If you like to talk, make calls. Call reporters, investigative journalists, newsstands, newspapers. Connect with others. Maybe you can go out and do what Terry's doing. He'll even send you the flyers to hand out, and I know that, some people are fearful of doing activism, of being a part of the movement. And all I can say is this: don't let fear make the decision for you. So everybody, get out there, do something, make a difference, because this is a difference that has to be made for future generations and for the futures of our children, grandchildren, and all generations to come. Thank you.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. Dr. Andrews gave us some very enlightening information. I would like for you guys to continue on with the series. Part 3 will be next week, of course, and there'll be some shorter presentations. So, very enlightening. I'm going to have all these people on the show for an interview with me. And, don't hesitate to send questions, connect with me. You can always email me. You can always connect with me via Skype. You can always give the shows, a call. Give the staff here a call. I mean, sometimes I might answer the phone. So we'll see. So with that, and the land of surveillance, man with third eye is king. So educate yourselves.